are right at noon. Welcome everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day. As a reminder, today's meeting will be recorded and there will be a vote that should be hitting your email box right at 1 is when the ballot will start being sent out. So we welcome all of you here, and we're going to do some brief introductions first, and then we'll get right into why everybody's here for the wonderful contract that we're very happy to present to you all, and then answer questions. The general structure of the day will be, we will spend 45 minutes explaining, or if we get through it all before then, explaining the contract and features. Please feel free to put any questions you have in chat. Put it in chat and we will answer them at the end. First 45 minutes, we'll be explaining the tentative agreement that we've reached with the county. And then the last 15 minutes will be answering any questions that we have in chat. And this video will be uploaded to the YouTube page so people who maybe can't make it will be able to review it at their leisure. So first, let's start off by introducing or asking people to introduce their team themselves. If I could ask the bargaining team and board to unmute yourself, and I will run through the list as I see it, starting now. Lawrence Michael, could you start us off?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Lawrence Michael Ciarias, your elected Vice President on the Executive Board. I am a Business Systems Analyst for TSS assigned at Tax and Collections. Happy to be in your bargaining team.
Thank you. Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Piazza. I'm an IT manager over at the hospital system facilities. I'm your SEMA member at large, and I am on your bargaining team and work very hard for you guys.
Wonderful. Andrew.
You're muted.
Everybody unmute, please, who's on the board or bargaining team. Thank you.
Yes, I thought I had. Hello, I'm Andrew Crockett, SEMA Treasurer and CPA. I am a Senior Healthcare Financial Analyst at VMC and have proudly served on the SEMA Santa Clara County bargaining team. I pass to Mary Beth.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Rogers, a member at large on the SEMA Executive Board, and I am a management analyst out at the Department of Family and Children's Services. And I was co-chair of the contract action team this year. And I'm really happy to see so many folks here this afternoon, I guess we're afternoon.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Mike.
Who else do it? Donna?
Hi, I'm Donna Mensimer. I am the SEMA Executive Board Secretary. I'm an Administrative Services Manager at Roads and Airports, and I was on the negotiation team, and glad to see you all. And I believe, Zeb, we were passing over to Mike.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Mike Pfister. I am part of the SEMA bargaining team, and I am also a Senior Strategic Sourcing Officer in the Procurement Department.
And Carla, please.
Hi, I'm Carla Collins. I'm your Senior Vice President on the board and work in the County Exec's Division of Equity and Social Justice, overseeing the Office of Gender-Based Violence Prevention.
Thank you. Robin, please.
Hi, I'm Robin Rivas Romano. I am a member at large on the executive board. I was part of the negotiations team, and I am an administrative support officer at SSA.
Thank you. Is there any bargaining team or board members that I haven't recognized? If so, please unmute and say hi. Hello.
Hi, Deb. Mary Snow here. I'm an IT manager with TSS, and I also served on your bargaining team.
Thank you so much, Mary. Anyone else, folks?
Hi, Zeb. This is Junalyn. Good afternoon, everyone. Junalyn here from Valley Health Plan Program Manager, and was part of the bargaining team for this round. Good afternoon and happy to meet everyone here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Junalyn. Anyone else before I move to staff? Last call. Okay, Adam, please.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. Thank you, everyone, for joining and coming to learn about the great new contract that this bargaining team brought you. We've had a couple hundred folks join since we first started. So just as a quick note to everyone, we'll be taking questions at the end. Please put your questions in chat in writing. We'll be trying to answer questions that we can written as we go through, but we'll also be taking questions verbally at the end. Let me pass it on to Lawrence.
Hi, folks. My name is Lawrence Su, one of your SEMA 03 business agents. Pass back to Zeb.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. So what we're going to do today is share with you the features of the contract as well as where you can access this information for yourself. So first off, while I'm talking, Lawrence, could you share the website so people can see where they can access right now, even as we're talking and downloading and follow along at home, so to speak. Also, I'd like to explain a few things about the contract. So let you introduce that while it's up.
Sure, absolutely. So folks, when you go on ssma.org, you'll be able to see the homepage here. It's going to be on the first slide of this slideshow where it says contract ratification vote notice. When you click onto this, you will have a bunch of buttons. We have the notice itself below. You will notice that amongst the buttons, we have the makeup of your bargaining team, the summary of changes, which is what we'll be walking over today, the full tentative agreement for the new SEMA contract, and a SEMA salary calculator that we'll show a quick demonstration of at today's meeting. The second place that you can also find all this information is under the negotiation updates that we've been updating since July of last year. And you'll see the same buttons with all the updates that have led us to reach to a tentative agreement on May 15th. I'll turn it back to you, Zeb.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm going to share on my screen here so you can see the document that we're going to be moving through while we discuss the various features of the contract. And that's one of the ones that Lawrence just highlighted that's available for you if you want to follow along with this, so right now I'm driving. So you can see here are the items that we're going to be covering. We're going to get as far as we can through in 45 minutes and then take 15 minutes to answer your questions. So what we're going to do is roll through these agent by agent and try to address your questions specifically. After we cover the first three, we're going to show you a calculator so you can put in your information and see what you would get gross. Something I want to highlight is that this contract is because of the excellent work that your bargaining team has done and you all showing up and showing out at the Board of Supervisors. That's what shook loose the service recognition pay, as well as our working with the board and working with the CEO and the county's negotiation team. And we'll explain that fully in a moment, which is the third item here. Also, I want to point out that this is an economically rich contract, both in dollars and in breadth of what it covers and who it covers. And how you'll see that expressed is the typical, an average SEMA member without any of the realignments will get on the lower end about 15.5% over the life of the agreement, which is a 3.5-year agreement. Or on the higher end, you're looking at somewhere just around 17%. And a lot of that will depend, you'll see when we go through the calculator, as to exactly what categories you fall into. But that's not including things like specialized premium pays or realignments or things like that. Those folks would just get more. Okay, so first off, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adam and Lawrence, each rep is now going to be covering 3 items. Is that correct? Or are we rotating each item?
Happy to do that. Let's do 3.
Okay. So the first item that you can see on the screen here is the general wage increase. It's a relatively simple plan, 5, 4, and 3. And you'll see the first pay period. So this is assuming that this is ratified. This would be after ratification and implementation by the board, pay period 2414, everybody would get a 5% general wage increase. Nurses are on a different schedule, which we'll cover when we get to that. But that's a historic schedule. It's not something we've changed in this contract. 4% general wage increase in pay period 2514 and a 3% in pay period 2614. Pension contribution cost reduction. This is Article 3. You can follow along with the full language if you like. Where Lawrence pointed out that you can download it. Also, I want to point out that in the ballot that you are going to receive, there will be hyperlinks to these as well, so for easy access. If you're in, most of our unit is in PEPRA miscellaneous or classic miscellaneous. This represents something like 95+% of the group. We are now a PEPRA majority unit. So I want to correct that, or not correct it, but just share it with folks. Some folks believe that we are still classic majority. Not the case. We switched over in the course of this last contract to be majority PEPRA. I'm going to primarily focus, if you're safety, probation, or parks, you can look at the numbers yourself. I'm going to primarily be focusing on PEPRA miscellaneous. You can see here effective in about 24 months. you will be receiving a 4.26% reduction in what you contribute to your pension. That's 4.26% you get to keep in your pocket, right? And that will reduce your current contribution from 11.76% down to 7.5%, which is considered half of the normal cost. That's the legal minimum you're allowed to contribute. For classic miscellaneous, hey, there's a very, very modest decrease. It's not as juicy as it is for the PEPRA people, but you will see that there's some offset to that with the service recognition pay. You will get a very modest 0.808% reduction, effective earlier, right upon ratification and implementation. So just in a couple months, or a month and a half, right there on June 24th.
I'd like to emphasize real quick,
Yep,
as
ahead.
goes to service recognition, is that the pension reductions represent a reduction to the legal minimum for every single SEMA classification in here. So regardless of the pension tier that you're in, if you're in classic, PEPRA, safety, or miscellaneous, what this represents is a reduction to the legal minimum for the pension contribution, which is a huge win. Folks that have been here a long time will know that in past years, SEMA was paying north of other unions and well north of the legal minimum. This is getting it as low as the bargaining team was legally able to get it down, which is great news for the future of SEMA.
Absolutely. And something that I wanted to lead with and forgot too, is that, you've heard me and other reps say, we are always bargaining for three groups whenever we're at the table: current members, future members, and past members. And this contract does an incredible job of transferring diminishing or perishable money into permanent reductions in PEPRA contribution rates, which is going to be the future of the unit. Now, also, many people on this call are going to be classic. So what's in the contract for classic people? Well, service recognition pay disproportionately impacts classic people. Of course, if you're classic, meaning you were hired on or before January 1, 2013, you're much closer to the 15 years of service necessary for this recognition pay. We originally billed this as longevity pay. This is one of the reasons that many of you showed up to the Board of Supervisors. We had 440 people show up. Great job. This is a different construction based on what we were able to negotiate with the county. So what exactly is it? Well, in June of 2026, so think about 24, 25 months from now, the service recognition pay will commence. What does it mean? Well, you will be eligible for a 3.5% differential on your base rate of pay. So pretend you make $100,000 a year, 3.5% is $3,500. It's not lost upon promotion or transfer the way that our longevity step could have been. So you promote, as long as you meet the criteria, you carry this along with you. So what do you need to do in order to get it? Well, you have to have had 15 years of service credit. That just means that you've worked for 15 years or longer with the County of Santa Clara. The other key piece is you have to have 3 successive annual evaluations with a meets expectation or better review. And the evaluations will be changed. Many of you will have undergone evaluations. Probably about half of you will have not. So this is going to be a huge incentive to do this. The evaluations will have a checkbox that says meets or exceeds expectations and a new checkbox that says needs improvement. As long as your evaluation is checked with needs or meets or exceeds expectations, you're eligible for this pay. The annual evaluations, if your boss doesn't submit it on time, you can escalate it directly to James Williams, the CEO's office, and James will either direct your director to do it or your boss to do it. Maybe he'll do it himself, who knows? So that's a way that we have a safety valve so that you aren't in just this hung state of having submitted your evaluation and your boss just isn't filling it out. RNPA classifications are unfortunately not eligible for the service recognition pay. While we included nurses all the way until the very end, the county stated that they were philosophically opposed to extending nurses. They view the current step 6 that's available to nurses as their version of longevity pay. Of course, we don't believe that that's the case, but it was not an item we were able to prevail upon with the county. Something too that I really want to point out on longevity pay is it's a 3.5% differential. That's a significant amount of money, right? Again, most folks earn well north of $100,000. That's $3,500 if you're only making 100. Also, a couple of questions that we've gotten in the past that I want to clarify now. This is not a PERSable differential. Our belief is that it is not PERSable. Let me put it that way. And we don't expect it to be. So don't expect for it to build your PERS, but it is still that 3.5%. And another thing is that our advice is to submit right after this contract becomes live, assuming it passes us and the board, this ratification vote in the board. Right after that June 24th, please put in your evaluation for this year so you can get as much lead time as possible for those 3 successful evaluations. If you are a supervisor, encourage your SEMA folks to do that too. So I know a lot of people on the call will also be supervisors. Please do that. It's a phenomenal benefit. You showing up at the board of supervisors are the ones that made this possible. So again, before I pass it on to Adam to hit the next 3, for PEPRA people, you're getting those incredible reductions, that 4.2% plus % reduction in what you're paying if you're miscellaneous. For classic people, while you only get a 0.08% reduction to what you're paying for your pension, you also are getting access to this longevity pay in 24 months. So that's a great benefit as well. All right, let me pass it on to Adam now.
Thanks, Zeb. So I want to hit real quick, just a little more explanation. I'm gonna share a salary calculator in just a moment that we'll be distributing to members so you can see what the impacts of those 3 main benefits look like. I want to just add on a little bit of what Zeb was saying there, specifically for our RMPA aligned SEMA nurse classifications, because these 3 big ones are the ones where there's either some similarity or divergence from other SEMA folks. So our RMPA aligned nurses will of course know that the general wage increase in the contract doesn't apply to you. You'll see RMPA's wage increases, which will be 3% shortly and 3.5% in October, then some additional wage increases through RMPA's contract. We were able to include the SEMA nurses in the pension reduction for both Classic and PEPRA. So upon implementation, about 70% of our nurses will be PEPRA, which means at minimum, most SEMA nurses are going to do 4.2% better than RMPA, just as far as take-home pay, which is great news for our nurses. And we'll see a host of other benefits that apply to you guys as we go through as well. The big deficit there, the big miss, was inclusion in the service recognition pay. Like Zeb said, the county's position was that they were philosophically opposed on that point. We even offered a lower overall benefit to the county, had a savings to them for inclusion of SEMA nurses, and that was not a point the county would budge on. So something we can look at in future years, but overall a fantastic contract for SEMA nurses. I'm going to share now that salary calculator that folks will be able to use to see what your take-home pay and gross pay will look like over the next 3 years with this contract. This is currently up on the SEMA website, and we'll get it out to you in your email shortly as well. What this calculator will do, will let you put your job code in here. So right now we have a senior management analyst in here, but we could change it to a bond and investment analyst or anything else. All the codes are in here. If you don't know what your code is, you can check it on the salary table right there on the second tab, put it in here. And then this will also ask you to put in your CalPERS tier list. In brief, for anyone who doesn't know, PEPRA is going to be people hired roughly since January 1, 2013 with the county, unless you have reciprocity from somewhere else. Classic will be those hired before. And then almost everybody in SEMA is miscellaneous. Our small number of peace officer positions are the safety ones. So you can see here, for example, a senior management analyst. Let's put them in as classic miscellaneous. So they've been here since 2013. And then this will apply over the next 3 years, the various baseline increases that everyone should be seeing. So what this does not include are additional differentials that may apply to you as an individual. Some of the things that we'll be seeing as we go through summary of changes. This has the baseline benefits, which everyone should be receiving. Coming across the bottom over here, the good news I can share is that Zeb undersold the cumulative increases that everyone's going to be entitled to, or didn't apply the cumulative effect that each wage increase has when it stacks one on top of another. So one of the nice features that Zeb touched on briefly about the service recognition pay is that it lines up with implementation in 3 years, such that if you are classic, you've been here since before 2013, you should be immediately eligible with the 15 years of service upon implementation of the longevity service pay language. and you can get your 3 neutral evaluations in these coming 3 years, such that it dovetails nicely right when it should be coming in. So if you look at that cumulative effect, what that means for someone who's classic is by the end of this contract, you'll be seeing a net 16.5% increase in your take-home pay over 3 years. And we'll be seeing an even larger one come through for our PEPRA folks. Let's go ahead and change that real quick. So if you're PEPRA miscellaneous, that PEPRA reduction hits right here in year 3, which the table will update correctly. And we'll see instead that year 3, you'll be getting almost an 18% take-home cumulative in your increased pay, take-home pay. And shortly after the end of this contract, folks who are PEPRA tier will start being able to get service recognition pay as they mature into that 15 years of service credit. And the value for this contract for those individuals will be all the way up at 22%. So really a fantastic contract and host of benefits to get in what's a relatively short agreement. Everyone knows we're coming off a 5-year agreement for our last contract, which was not as rich in other non-salary benefits as this one. It's really great work by your bargaining team. For some context of where other unions landed, if we look at SEIU's cumulative effect over their 3-year contract, that was only 13.5% over 3 years, and that was 544. So 13.5 was their cumulative wage increase. This is the 3rd contract in a row now where SEMA managers have done extremely well compared to peer and sister unions in the county. And a lot of that is thanks to your level of involvement and engagement and by having an extremely effective bargaining team. So everybody will get this document in their email. It's also currently up on the SEMA webpage. You can play with it, plug in your own job code, plug in your own pension tier, and it will multiply through all the wage increases and pension reductions that you'll be seeing alongside any realignments for your code. We'll be talking about a little bit later.
And Adam, before you hit those next items that I'm going to share in a second, just as a reminder to everybody, it is the calculator is gross pay, not net pay.
It shows
so
both.
always bear that in mind, because we don't have access to whatever your individual contributions are to taxes and alimony payments, whatever there might be.
Right. When we say net pay in there, we mean the gross pay less pension contributions, which is the big thing changing here. We of course can't speculate how much you're withholding for taxes. So you'll have to do your own math past that point. Okay, let's touch on some other items here. So the 4th one is that this contract will be a little bit longer than 3 years. The contract's going to continue through December of 2027. So tacking some months on to the end of the contract was kind of the final move the bargaining team made to create a little bit more basically money availability during the contract cycle to get this entirely new type of benefit in the contract, which is the longevity or service recognition pay. What that effectively means is that in 2027, the wage increase for that cycle, so 4 wage increases down the road, will be coming a little later than folks would have otherwise expected. But all the wage increases will be in the same normal June window for this coming June and the next 2 years after that. Item number 5 is one that I was very happy to see come through. We tried very hard in the last negotiations. Folks in the bargaining team 5 years ago recall that. I see Lawrence, Michael, and Jim. We fought about this a lot 5 years ago to try to decouple your ability to cash out your vacation or STO from whether or not you'd taken sick leave in the prior year. Everyone should know right now, you take 4 more days of sick leave in the previous year, you're unable to cash out your vacation in the following year. That never made sense, particularly for a management unit, to try to create some, to the employer side, disincentive for folks to inappropriately call in sick. We know we have the complete opposite problem in SEMA, right? You guys are working while you're sick instead of taking time off, right? You're working too hard. So that was never something that we frankly needed in SEMA's contract. Those arguments didn't work 5 years ago. Thankfully, post-COVID, that argument was much more persuasive, and we've now permanently decoupled vacation cash out from whether or not you've taken sick leave. This means you can take sick leave as needed in the previous year, and you will still be able to access your vacation cash out in the following year. Also some minor changes to ATO around the legitimate business reason notice for denials of ATO. Moving on to item number 6. This was, I believe, our 4th highest priority in the survey that we put out. So just to give some perspective on this, SEMA hit almost all of the top 20 priorities that you guys gave us in the survey. And we hit all of the top 4 priorities, which were larger wage increases than in previous years for the first one. Getting the pension down to legal minimum was priority 2. Some kind of longevity pay was priority number 3. And not seeing healthcare costs go up was number 4. So we've been able to keep healthcare costs where they're at. This is a big win given how much inflation there's been to healthcare in the last 5 years that we've been under contract. So we're happy to report there will be no increase to your insurance premiums for this cycle. There will additionally, and somewhat surprising to us, be no increases to OPEB. Those are the other post-employment benefits. That's what funds the retiree healthcare. The county was very interested in increasing this last contract cycle, and we're able to keep it flat. And we're able to keep it flat once again. So good news, your costs are not going up for healthcare and retiree healthcare. Let me pass it on to Lawrence for the great news, given where we are right now, on better layoff language.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. Now, although this was not something that was a priority that the membership had set forth, our bargaining team had the foresight to see that, look, with the budgetary woes that's facing this county for this year and also for future years, there really needed to be some sort of update and more protections for our layoff language. And that's exactly what we did under Article 15. Some of the 3 major changes to the layoff procedures that, 1, for folks who are in a probationary period, we're now carving out and differentiating those folks between the initial probationary period and the subsequent probationary period, so that individuals who are being offered opportunities to promote or through promotional transfers, that they will be lower on the list in terms of who would get laid off first. So that's a great change in that aspect. Some other changes includes the clarity on the agencies and department groupings when it comes to bumping and in-placement. Something you'll take a look at is for those who went through the ITCC process, which is number 3 over here. This would also have the ability to actually map out where these individuals are and take that into account when we're going through layoffs. Something that is definitely very valuable for individuals who will be seeing through some tougher times at this county. The next item for the professional development tuition reimbursement. Great improvement here is that, look, with increasing costs of education, we're making sure that we're increasing the bucket to $500,000 per year. We've seen that in the past couple of years, this bank has been emptied out quite over and over again, which is great. You know, there's definitely a benefit that we want members to tap into, and now we're increasing that benefit with the addition of increasing the individual reimbursement limit to $4,500. There's some other language changes that allows for some amount of flexibility, and definitely when it comes to the bottom line of the dollar amount, this is a great improvement from what we had previously. We then also have a change in the work out of class, more so in 2 parts. That, 1, that we have a retro guarantee. There's been a lot of complications that we have seen in the past couple of years through workout class. Some of those individuals are actually here on this call, and I'm happy to report that, 1, we have some more clarity on the workout class language, but also 2, when it comes to workout class that has been pre-approved, there will be a guarantee for the retroactivity of pay, so that we know that when you're working out class, you're compensated for that time when you're assigned. I'll pass it on to Zeb.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. So also good news about compaction definition. So those of you who've been here for a little while, you know that we have previously had compaction in our contract. However, it has never been defined. So what that has led us to is that we've just had to arm wrestle with HR about whether compaction should even be considered and what a reasonable compaction number was. So this is the first time that we're seeing a hard percentage, you'll see here 10%, between SEMA managers and non-SEMA subordinates. So I don't want anyone to be confused by this. Although there's excellent language that we have a percentage, I'm viewing this as the thin end of the wedge, that right now it's applying just to non-SEMA subordinates. If we do this right in several bargaining cycles, maybe we'll be able to get it to include just 10% as a pay philosophy. I realize that's a heavy ask. But regardless, this means that if you can do the work of your subordinate and you're supervising someone who's not in SEMA, we can put you through our classification study process and you will make 10% step to step. So that's a big win for many folks. For 11, management aid realignment, you can see where the article is here. There's a bunch of realignments that have occurred, all relatively modest in nature, with the exception of the management aides. They're receiving an 11.55% individual realignment, in addition to the year one general wage increase. The reason that they are receiving such a large realignment is a great credit to them. They do a lot of hard work for us throughout the county, and they are one of our lowest paid classifications. Also, they are outside of the transfer band range for the associate management analyst. So there's a few management aides that are out there that are not in alternately staffed classes and were just stranded, that they couldn't transfer to the next appropriate class. So this means that they can reach the chain associate management analyst from management aide. So well done to the team for that. Licensure and certification reimbursement improvements. So this is an enhancement. Historically, licenses and certifications that are legally required or are considered county mandated have been provided. However, this section allows the reimbursement for those certifications which are relevant to your job, but not required. So maybe your job spec doesn't say must have a CPA, but you do accounting work, must have an LMFT, but you do some kind of reconciliation work. So that's where this really shines. You'll see this in the significance portion here that members in generic codes are often required, or excuse me, heavily encouraged to have licensures or certifications. But we want to be able to make sure that they're able to actually get these, even though it's not called out in their specific job classification. So this is a fix to that.
Mhm.
All right, Adam, you want to share the news about the broad range?
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit on that license and certification reimbursement as well to kind of tease apart, because this does two actually kind of discrete things. One is that for those folks, for example, that Zeb mentioned, your program managers who might need to be LCSWs because the county's using your license in some way. Those licenses will now be reimbursed at an unlimited rate as opposed to coming out of our $500,000 for PD and tuition. So it no longer gets debited against the total for education reimbursement, which is great. In addition to that, those other licenses, which might be nice to have, for example, think your project management certificate or case manager certificate if you're an RN case manager. Those are things that our members have had a hard time getting reimbursed for, the non-necessary but industry standard certificates. Those are now all eligible under the PD and tuition limit. So fewer things will get debited against the PD and tuition pot, and more things will be able to be included that weren't in there before. So it does two great things. For number 13, broad range conversion, this has been a goal for SEMA for a while. Most of you won't know what this is. There's about 30 to 40 SEMA members who are in codes that are called broad range. If you're in this, you know. And what broad range is are pay codes that don't have step plans. So you have a pay range that's twice as large as the range for a 5-step plan. And every year you get a increase based on merit and your boss's discretion. And just very frequently what happens is folks just miss the window where they have to even make a decision about giving an increase because there's so few of these codes that no one's paying attention to them. And it becomes a huge headache and hassle for the members to try to make sure they're even seeing an annual increase, much less getting what would be a standard 5% step increase every year. So what this conversion does is it converts all of those codes to step plans and sets step 5 equal to the top of the broad range, which is great because that means the bottom half of the pay scale for these positions is just gone. If you are in the bottom half of the pay scale, you're coming up to step 1, which is now halfway up where the pay scale used to be. This is really the best possible language that we could have had for broad range conversion. It's a huge win for folks that are in these codes. A lot of people will see some substantial double-digit wage increases in the first year of the contract if you're in these codes, if you are in the bottom half of the broad range. And then on top of that, you'll start getting step increases every year for the next 5 years. It's really great news, and we're happy to have these codes no longer there as an administrative headache for everybody involved and on great advantageous terms for the incumbents. Number 14 is full and part-time liaisons. This is an area where SEMA has just not been at parity with our brother and sister unions in the county. Almost all other unions and absolutely all other unions of SEMA's size have what's called lost time or release time for their executive board members, where the county picks up some level of FTE or reduces duties for those folks involved to help support the union and union activities and labor management cooperation. Our SEMA executive board really does absolutely ridiculous amount of work supporting you all in SEMA, especially through budget cut times and negotiations that we've just been in. So this is getting our foot in the door on that language as well. And it gives a 1.0 FTE that can be either given as a whole or chopped up in two parts for what's effectively release time for that year for the SEMA incumbent. So great news there. And then number 3, let's look at the item 15 on here, which is the automatic licensure studies. So this is kind of hits some of that same group we were talking about with the license reimbursement for those generic codes, the PMs and management analysts of the county. This is a great example of language that made into the contract because of engagement and participation and involvement from a small number of SEMA folks who this affects, to really make sure that this issue was identified and that we had some good language going into negotiations to try to address this issue. So what we're trying to address here are those of you that are in generic codes, right? Program manager, IT manager, management analyst, but you legally need to, or the county's getting some benefit directly from the fact that you have a particular license or certification. So my oft referenced group here are our program managers in behavioral health who are LCSWs or LMFTs, and your license is being used by the county for regulatory or approval purposes for a clinic that you run. You were hired because you have this certification or licensure, but you're paid at the same rate as everybody else in the generic code. So what this language gets us is an automatic classification study of all folks that are in this group. So there'll be a call out for you to identify yourself, right? Fairly soon, for you to say, hey, this applies to me. I legally need to have a license, or the county is using my license in some way for my job. And you will get a classification study in the first year of the contract. Some possible solutions that we've bandied around with the county on this could be more specific titles, the same way in social services, for example, we have program managers and then social services program managers. We could imagine program manager and behavioral health program manager, or public health program manager, right? Or what have you, or possibly a differential or something like that. This doesn't obligate the county to any one particular solution, but language like this has been very effective for SEMA and other units in the past. For example, it was language very similar to this that resulted in those between 3 to 10% increases that a lot of RMPA nurses saw in the last contract cycle. So we're optimistic about a good resolution on this particular issue using this language. Let me hand it on to Lawrence for realignment.
Thank you, Adam. With a very limited pot of money for our realignments, this is one of the tools that we are trying to use to be able to solve some very immediate salary compaction issues, especially for those individuals who've had subordinates who make maybe oftentimes more money than their superiors. Maybe it's a very small difference of 1 or 2%. These were the classifications that we've prioritized. But for any other salary compaction issues, this is where we have the new compaction language through the class study process. So you will be seeing this list of realignments, and this is what this section really kind of addresses from compaction and other underlying classification issues. For the next item of deferred comp, we are one of the first unions that actually has language in automatically enrolling newly hired SEMA members at a rate of 1% to the county's 457B deferred compensation program. It's a very robust program that a lot of participants have definitely touted on being thankful and actually participating in this program. And it's something that we're trying to educate more and more members in participating in, because it definitely helps, really gives some amount of financial security that's on top of the pension that county employees will get. In the next one, we also have the first-time homebuyer resources, another great resource that we're trying to engage more members in tapping into, especially when it comes to trying to get home in Santa Clara County, a very expensive place to live in. This will be a new language that you'll see under Article 5 with homebuyer assistance information. I'll hand it over to Zeb to touch on our arbitration panel.
Wonderful. Also, just as a clarifying point, members will notice that we have started with the higher priority items. We're at the very beginning that impact people's pocketbooks a lot more and have almost universal impact. Then we've moved through mid-impact. Now we're in the lower impact items, but that still may be important to individuals. So these we're going to go a little bit quicker through, but just wanted to highlight that. So 19, the arbitration panel. We upgraded the arbitrator list. The fact that we have binding arbitration in our contract is extremely valuable. That's how we enforce our contract when we come to a disagreement with the employer. So this is just an update so that we're able to have arbitrators that are active and alive on the panel. 20, classification study backlog. All outstanding classification studies from the prior contract, some go back 5-6 years. The county has committed to close all of these out in the first year of the new contract. So it's great news for people who either didn't put in through the SEMA process or have had things languishing for just an extended period of time. On-call pay improvement. This is one that I think is a little bit of a miss. We were trying, while it is an enhancement, we were trying to get something substantially more for on-call pay. We do see a very modest increase here of $3 per day. It is an increase, but I think with the other economic items you saw, you'll see that the on-call in our contract is called 24-hour differential for special duties. We did get a little bit more consideration. The $3 per day, most people who are on this are going to be paid on a pay period basis. So you'll see that daily rate built in to the per pay period basis. All right, Adam, it lines up nicely for you with the nurse languages.
Wow, look at that math. So we have some very minimal changes to this is the RMPA Me Too section of SEMA's contract. We're really disincentivized to make any major changes to this section because it's been so effective at capturing various types of pay increases that have gone to RMPA over the last contract cycle. We've had good past practice and good jurisprudence effectively set with the current construction of this language. So there's been some minor tinkering around here, really to just update and change around the list of eligible classifications. So there's a couple that have been included, particularly those health center managers who are becoming RN specialty managers. They'll be included in the language, as well as the chief of quality management. And then the county strongly prioritized removal of public health nurse managers from this section. And SEMA's met with those folks directly to talk about impacts of that. So just some kind of minor changes both in and out of the Me Too language with RMPA. Otherwise, we haven't touched it because we like the job that it's currently doing. Number 23, these are some individual differentials that impact groups of people. The first one is a healthcare service line director differential. This is for service line directors who are RNs and supervise RNs. They're currently making less than the nurse managers they supervise. A 6% differential will at least correct that. While it won't pull them up to 10% above, it will at least ensure they're not making less than their subordinates. In SEIU's contract, DFCS, all SEIU employees in DFCS saw between a 6 or 9% differential for working in DFCS for the 6%, and more specifically 9% if you work in emergency response. That is being mirrored for program managers and SSPMs that work in DFCS and emergency response and are in SEMA. And finally, a minor expansion of the pest applicator differential to apply to an additional code in SEMA. I'm gonna scroll down. Yep. Yep, that's up. Scroll down. 224. There we go. And then secured facility differential. This was another one of our misses from last negotiations that we're very happy we've gotten in the contract now. We had a lot of lobbying and effort last time to get a locked facility or hazard pay or something like that into the contract and missed 5 years ago. We've gotten it in now. This is a 225 per pay period flat rate differential for folks who are required as part of their job to regularly work in a secured facility. So that's BAP, EPS, James Ranch, Juvenile Hall, Elmwood, Main Jail. This exempts codes that by their nature are required to work in there. This is for folks where your code might work in there, it might not. We're requiring you to go work there. So we're building in some what's effectively hazard pay or secured facility. This comes up to right around $5,000 a year for folks that are required to work in those settings. Let me pass it back to Lawrence for contracting.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, so something that we've heard loud and clear from our membership is the issues with a lot of SEMA marketing work being contracted out to non-county employees. There's been some strengthening of the language to where we've increased the limit in terms of the average cost that's being contracted out. So now it'll be equivalent to one SEMA FTE. It's a minor change, but it's certainly something that's important for us and to make sure that we're engaging in discussions in terms of work being contracted out. We have some other minor language changes to the updated uniform allowance under Article 10. This is more so to capture some of the new additions from the previous contract and have it all under one umbrella so that we know which classifications can access the uniform allowance. And lastly, with the alternate work schedules and telework updates, what essentially is happening with the language changes here is that the county will be trying to find ways to streamline the process so that there will be easier renewals of telework and alternate work schedules. On top of that, a study to actually look into county facilities and services where it can be reduced to a 4-day work week, which allows for a greater opportunity for 410 schedules that SEMA members that oftentimes would like to work under. It comes at no cost to the current telework structure and language as well. I'll pass it on to Zeb.
Great, thank you. So for grievance procedure updates in Article 16, we have an extended timeline to reach informal
Hey Zeb,
resolution.
I'm gonna cut you off. Something's gone on with your speaker. Do you want to try and fix it real quick, and I'll tackle grievance update and try and pass it back to you for overpayment. Tackle this one though. So for number 28 grievance procedure, there's been an added step in here to include an optional mediation step prior to advancing to arbitration. This is something that either side can waive if they so choose, but we think there's often going to be opportunities where we can mutually reach agreement with the county and avoid arbitration. We have a practice of we've never lost an arbitration with SEMA, nor have we lost a PERB charge against the county in the past. So the county knows and understands that when we're filing charges, they have weight to them. And more often than not, we're able to reach mediated resolution with the county. This adds a formal step in for that process to try to avoid the expensive arbitration on both parties. We passed it back to Zeb for overpayment.
Thank you. So overpayment errors, this is one where some of you actually on this call, I can see I've helped you on this, where the county has overpaid you and then they come back to you with a big bill. So let's say they've overpaid you for a year, 18 months, year and a half, and they'll come back and say, hey, we overpaid you by $28,000. You'll have a check for us next week, right? And you're like, hey, wait a minute. So we've had to negotiate that on a case-by-case basis. This sets it up that if you're overpaid in error, you get repayment schedules that cannot be shorter than the window in which you were overpaid. So if you were overpaid by 18 months, you have 18 months to repay that. It's not something that frequently happens, but it's a good protection. Also, this is generally a very positive contract, as I hope you'll agree after seeing the full breadth and depth. Normally, employers come with significant takeaways. The two takeaways here are extremely modest. The first is a management rights section called out in Article 26, if you're reading the full agreement. All that this is a recitation of what the rights management has under the labor law that already exists. So got it. They want to enshrine that under MMBA, which stands for Myers-Browne Act. Totally fine for them to include that in the contract. Technically is a takeaway though. Also two, the classification study number reduction. We previously have had 30, as you can see here, and we've had that number reduced to 20. Really, this was an exchange to get the strict compaction definition into the contract that you will have seen at that 10%. Also, it was, while this wasn't nakedly stated, it's also in recognition for clearing out all of those backlogs that have been going on for the last 6 years. Perfect. I am going to stop the share now, and we can turn to our illustrious secretary, Donna, to pitch some of the questions, popular questions from chat to us, so the reps can try to answer them.
Okay, so I'm actually going to try and group some together. There are quite a bit of comments. And if I miss somebody's name, but there were quite a bit of comments of people asking for the difference between Classic and Pepra and why they felt Classic was actually taken care of immediately, where Pepra had to wait.
Sure, I can speak to that, then I'll let another rep talk to the next one. So Classic is taken care of immediately because their reduction is so modest. I'll put the sheet back up. But when you look at it, you'll see that the reduction for Classic is 0.08%, and the reduction for Pepra is 4.26%. So, again, in my earlier example, say you make $100,000 a year, you get $800 if you're you get $80. If you're a Classic individual, you get 4,200 if you're a Pepra individual. So because of that, and we're pushing things towards the end of the contract to get the maximal benefit that we can. When I say end of the contract, I mean 24 months in. So that's the reason for that delayed implementation. Also, I saw noted in the chat, but I want to note this as well. Our Pepra individuals are the future of the union. The Classic individuals simply have a better plan. They can retire at 55. So don't worry, Classic people, you have a better plan, and this corrects the situation where someone was paying more for a worse plan.
I'd like to add on just a little bit to a follow-up question you got there, Zeb, and it's that the position the bargaining team found themselves in is that the county budgeted a certain amount of money for fiscal year 2024, and we just continued to push to get the pension reduction in year one. The county was just going to refuse because the Pepra reduction will cost about $25 million to the county. That money is not currently budgeted right now for a SEMA increase for the tentative budget that was already done. If we somehow persuaded the county to do that in year one, they would have cut additional positions to the tune of $25 million. That's not to say we didn't push. We push for the best contract we can, irrespective of, that concern, frankly. But part of where your SEMA bargaining team is effective is on to be more receptive. We can get an overall much higher value in the contract than other unions did, which is something you see when we looked at that cumulative increase over 3 years of us compared to SEIU. Your bargaining team did between 3 to 4% better, right, than SEIU did over a 3-year period in a vastly worse economic situation than SEIU got the opportunity to negotiate in. And part of that, frankly, came at a cost of pushing some costs back in a way where, in order for the board to authorize that money, it doesn't mean they're also immediately going to have to cut more programs that they care strongly about. So frankly, I think it was a strong strategic move by the county. And in addition, we, unlike other unions, were able to still front load wage increases. If folks have seen the tentative agreement that's out from RNPA, for example, they had to do the opposite with their wage increases. They start small and get bigger. Wage increases are the most important things for everybody, frankly, to deal with inflation immediately. And we were able to keep all of our wage increases front loaded with the 5% hitting in year one. So I want to give some credit to the bargaining team. I think they did a fantastic job trying to balance concerns here and still get the most economically rich contract of any union in the county right now. So my hat's off to them.
Yeah. And I would add too, it's very hard. Pepra is a law. We have to follow it. Some of these things are you can't negotiate. It's actually the law that we have to follow. So the next question was, does the compaction also apply for SEMA to SEMA classification?
So no.
I think I'm muted. No, it just
we've been trying for decades to get any compaction language into the contract. We've never had it before. And the county's been extremely resistant to it because they fear basically the ripple effect up the chain of command of, we gave one SEIU code a raise, there's 5 SEMA codes above it, and what we thought was going to cost $1 million ended up costing $15 million in a way they can't predict. That's been their fear and why we've never been able to get compaction language into the contract thus far. Frankly, we think that's an overwrought fear and unjustified. This is the first foot in the door with compaction language, and this is, again, another example of some particular creativity on this bargaining team. In particular, kudos to our president, Dolores Morales, for identifying this as something we could pressure the county to agree to. This is limited at just that frontline level of SEMA to RMPA or SCIU or 1587 or whoever, right? But it gives us that 10% hard definition in a way that we've never had that before. Everybody else, we're still in the same, we haven't lost our ability to address compaction for you. We're in the same position for you we were yesterday, which is we have to put the study in and make a best argument that we can. And usually we're successful, but not always. We'll hope to expand this language in future years, though, to include and incorporate other folks. But this is the first time we've gotten a foot in the door on hard compaction language, which is great. And we'll hope to expand it from here.
Okay, next question is, are we able to extend these sessions to allow more time for members' questions before the vote?
So the vote will, no, is the short answer, unfortunately. We can do additional sessions, I suppose, but we will have another session tomorrow, and the voting period is a week. So it's not like, you know, while the ballots will be mailed out in a few moments, everyone will be able to review the full contract language should they wish, as well as the summary of changes, and watch the prior YouTube video and this one for answers. So, and we can also respond at the next meeting tomorrow.
Yes, I would recommend you can reach out to your liaisons. If you know somebody, you know, you can reach out to your business rep. You can email help if you have additional questions. The next question was, actually, I think this was answered in the email, but will PEPRA public safety employees be paying the same CalPERS contribution as PEPRA non-safety? And I believe there was a response, but also I think we need to recognize that the public safety PEPRA get 2% at 57, I think. They get it earlier, correct? That's why they pay in more on the legal.
That's correct. They
okay.
can retire earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, so safety just has a completely different formula for folks who are not familiar. This is 50 or fewer people in SEMA that this covers, and there's an entirely different formula, and they also don't have the enhancement that our classic folks have on their side.
Correct.
Then just one quick note of encouragement along with what Donna said. You can find not just the summary of changes, but the entire new proposed tentative contract up on SEMA's website. We always make that available to members. We're not legally obligated to. You'll notice some other unions right now going through negotiations. Their members are very frustrated they can't access the full agreement prior to voting. You'll be able to, and it's online right now.
Okay. The next question was for the service recognition pay. If folks have 15 years of service credit once the contract goes live, plus 3 years of meets expectations, do they receive the benefit right away or starting 3 years from the contract?
So it's eligible for you to kick in pay period 14 of 2026, which means if you start getting your annual evaluations in as soon as the contract goes into effect with the new language, you should be able to get 3 in time, depending on how your department runs your annual evaluations, in time to be eligible day 1, if you will have 15 years or more when that pay period 14, 2026 comes.
Okay. I'm a classic member and joined Santa Clara County from the County of Marin in March 2013. Am I eligible for this?
So the definition is based on service credit. So you will be eligible once you hit 15 years of service credit with Santa Clara County.
Okay.
With Santa Clara County, yes.
Yes. Where can I find the template for the annual evaluation?
So it hasn't gone live yet. It'll come out from ESA. Go ahead, Zeb.
No, go ahead.
So it hasn't gone live yet. We reviewed it tentatively with the county bargaining team prior to final TA, but it will come out alongside the final agreement when the contract goes into effect.
Okay. How is the service credit fair to the majority of SEMA members who are PEPRA? Why are Classic and PEPRA pitted against each other, especially when PEPRA is paying more for pension? We need relief now.
So I'd
if
like
you say
to
pitted
share
against each
again
other,
the
yeah.
So I just want to share and emphasize real quick. It's been a little bit of a head scratcher for us that we've gotten some comments from folks who are PEPRA about the quality of the deal. I want to emphasize just real quick what the numbers look like for you if you're PEPRA. Over the first 3 years of this contract, you will see an 18% increase, 17.91 in your take-home pay, which is it's well over 5% per year, which has been the nearby have done for large similar units to SEMA. In addition, you're still
Adam,
eligible for the service recognition pay, right?
Okay.
Like our PEPRA folks who were hired 2013 eligible for it shortly as this contract expires, which means the value cutting in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it okay, Donna?
Now it is.
Donna?
It's
okay.
not good.
Which means the value for okay. Which means the value for this contract for you will be all right. I will let Zeb speak briefly to the numbers on the screen then, if you'd like to.
Sure. So what you're seeing on the screen is a recitation. I want to highlight
Would you
a
like to
couple
speak
things.
briefly on the PEPRA numbers, Zeb, or just to move on to the next question?
Okay. I'm going to talk on this. So what you see on the screen is a recitation of the PEPRA numbers as well as the classic numbers. What I just want to point out is that the PEPRA individuals do see a larger decrease because, as we mentioned, they're paying more for a lesser benefit. So that's something that is a big positive. PEPRA is also the future of the unit in the sense that every day that goes by, there's going to be more PEPRA people in the unit. Also, I want to point out that other employers, like take the city of San Jose, they have 6 different pension tiers. That's something that you can be proud of as a pension member, or excuse me, as a SEMA member, that we haven't done that to our pension. We have kept it at 2 tiers, and we wouldn't have even had a second tier if Sacramento didn't pass legislation that forced us to have a second tier. So that's something that we don't like, the second tier. We're working to reform it. Something in the next 5 to 10 years we're hoping to do. And we, like I say, we're trying to make those adjustments. We are just 2 minutes over. Donna, could you give us just one more question and then we will
I know I'm trying to find like a different one that's in here. They all seem to be about this difference with CalPERS. I think it probably would help us if we actually post something on our website on what the PEPRA rules are, and that there's many things that are outside of us. However, we are affiliated with OE3 and constantly are looking at our lobbyists to make sure that we know there's a difference. But for those of us who were hired before 2013, we got classic. We pay 10.931. The people that got hired at that got hired in at the 2% at 62. And I know it's frustrating, but it's PEPRA ruling with the state. So there is a question on why couldn't the education allotment of $4,500 also be rolled over if not used each year?
Sure. So that's a good question. It's a usage issue. So as Lawrence mentioned when he was explaining that section of the contract, we've historically gone through the entirety of that bucket. So while there's an individual bucket of 4,500 now is what it's increased to, there's a unit bucket, which is now 500,000. We've been exhausting the $350,000 bucket. So we don't want someone to be able to, at least from my perspective, from the bargaining team's perspective, we didn't want someone to say be able to store up $50,000 worth of credit if they haven't taken advantage of it and then use that all in 1 year and break the budget for just a couple of people. So that's why it's trying to do the most for the most.
Okay, and I think there's some confusion on the 15 years for the merit system. It's 15 years with the county. I think Lawrence Michael just responded. It's not, you don't have to be 15 years within your same agency or in the same job code. It's within the county.
That's right.
I think those were answered on the broad range. There are tons. I've saved all the questions, so
we could put up an FAQ maybe.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
So I've saved all the questions that were done.
Thank you, Donna. Well, so thank you, everybody. In closing, I want to remind folks that this is a recommended yes vote from your bargaining team staff and union leadership. The ballots should be starting to be emailed now. And we really appreciate you taking time out of your day today and joining us for this informational roadshow session. And thank you, everybody who who came out to the Board of Supervisors, and thank you all for your support. And thank you especially to the bargaining team. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Don't forget to vote.
Right now. Yeah.